Sociology is the study of society and the relationships between institutions like education, media, and the family, and social groups based on social class, gender, ethnicity, age, sexuality, and disability. Quite simply, sociology A-level examinations expect you to apply the assessment objectives to the relationships between institutions and social groups. Underlying your understanding of these relationships are seminal concepts, and a clear understanding of some seminal concepts will ensure your high grade in the final examinations. In sociology, these concepts largely present themselves as dualities. This is when two elements are distinct and yet interdependent. So, for example, we have dualities such as sex and gender, and race and ethnicity, where two elements like sex and gender are distinct but interdependent. Can you think of other dualities? How about inequality and stratification, absolute poverty and relative poverty, knowledge and experience, fact and opinion, freedom and control, and objectivity and subjectivity? I'd welcome your thoughts on how these elements in their couplets differ, because understanding and applying these qualities are the first steps towards developing an analytical and evaluative mindset. Do email me at nari@sociologyvideoscribe.com together with exercises I've set at the end of this presentation. Leaving these dualities aside, we now come to the most instructive duality in sociology, the interdependence between conditions and consciousness. I'll put the seemingly simple question to you and ask you to reflect for a moment. Does your life, your conditions of existence, determine the way you think, your consciousness, or does the way you think, your consciousness, determine your life, your conditions of existence? To put it another way, does what I am determine who I am, or does who I am determine what I am? Some sociologists claim that the outside conditions determine what you are, and this in turn dictates who you are. So, my condition as an underclass pauper or a middle-class bank manager in the social class system, or female or male as my sex, or African, Asian or European as my race, affects the way others see me and creates my consciousness and who I am. For example, the systemic conditions of racial and sexual discrimination establishes black and female consciousness, like Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement. These reactionary movements become sources of identity and wouldn't exist without sexual and racial stratifications. In other words, the societal condition of racial and sexual stratification create black and women consciousness. Other sociologists believe an individual's will, consciousness and agency are more important and can change the conditions to create a new reality. A new reality for Martin Luther King Jr. in his 1963 I Have a Dream speech was a day when people will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. And that day came with the first black president of the USA, or did it? A eulogy given to George Floyd, a black American asphyxiated by a white policeman kneeling on his neck, indirectly referred to Barack Obama, saying, "A man comes out of a single-parent home, educates himself, and rises up and becomes the President of the United States. And you ask him for his birth certificate because you can't take your knee off our neck." That was from Reverend Al Sharpton on the 5th of June 2020. The complex dialectical entanglement between the theses of external conditions and the antitheses of internal consciousness is seminal to sociology, and one that threads through all topics regardless of examination boards. Sociology is about social change, brought about by this entanglement. And this is the overriding concern of sociologists. Moreover, education is seen by many as the main predicator of social change, and it's no wonder that Nelson Mandela believed that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Or, to put it in another way, the pen is mightier than the sword. For sociologists, changing the world means changing the system and the way things are done. For example, the conditions created by the coronavirus pandemic has required more people to work from home and businesses to think in a different way. Sociologists see social change as a dialectic between conditions, that is, institutions and structures, and consciousness, the will and agency, or the hearts and minds of people. The dialectical conflict establishes social change, or a synthesis. Those sociologists who prioritize structures and external conditions above agency and internal consciousness are called structuralists. And structuralism is a core perspective that claims conditions of social class, sex, and race, together with institutions like education, the family, and religion, are social facts that determine our consciousness from the outside. Social facts are fixed and absolute categories new generations are born into because they're pre-given and a priori. After all, your social class, sex, and race are determined at birth, and you're not given a choice. Structuralists consider sociology a science, following its objectivity, for example, mapping friendship patterns in a classroom, its absolutism, rich or poor, female or male, black or white, for example, a rich white male, and its determinism, no choice. Sociology as a science uses the scientific method and statistics to examine society through patterns and correlations. Thus, structuralism claims societal conditions, the cause, determine individual consciousness, the effect. Opposing this view are the agency sociologists, who prioritize internal consciousness above external conditions and view consciousness as the driving force of life. This view represents the social action perspective, also called interpretivism, and it emphasizes interaction and empathetic understanding, or Verstehen, between individuals where one walks in another's shoes. Action theorists argue the world is socially constructed by individuals negotiating and agreeing the meaning of universally accepted symbols and other everyday things identified through very specific symbols such as language. Interpretivists believe individuals are agents of their own future. Agency is the ability to choose and transform social facts and view society as work in progress that constructs new social realities. Sex and race may be absolute facts as claimed by the structuralists, but terms like gender, sexuality, and ethnicity represent freedom to choose and change society. They are relative and not absolute. For example, a statue of Colston displayed in public caused offence to some white and black British groups because his fortune was made through the slave trade in the 17th century. With growing black consciousness and Black Lives Matter, the statue was removed as a symbol of oppression and a badge of shame, and was dumped in the Bristol Harbour. However, some backlashed by claiming these statues represent heritage, good or bad, and dumping them is not only nonsensical, as you can't change the past, but also criminal. The backlash was so strong that some vandalised the headstone of an 18th century slave, Scipio Africanus, at a local cemetery and wrote, "Put Colston's statue back or things will really heat up." The Colston incident provides an excellent example of dialectics in action. You'll no doubt agree that the present is based on the past, and all present conditions are rooted in history. Symbols and public reminders of the past, and Colston's statue represents the past and an antithesis of oppression and racism that some believe glorifies the slave trade. However, others, the theses, hold the establishment view that you cannot change the past, and it has to be accepted. The synthesis could well be to remove sensitive symbols from our open and public spaces and place them in museums fully annotated with their historical past. Action theorists, while not denying historical conditions frame action, as in Colston's case, nevertheless argue action is necessary for change. They place opinions above social facts, voluntarism, agency or free will, above determinism, and subjectivity over objectivity. The difference between structure and agency will form the bedrock of your examination responses, while the assessment objectives skills will frame them. So why not jump in at the deep end and have a go in identifying and pairing these concepts according to the structure-agency model. Email me at nari@sociologyvideoscribe.com and I'll see how well you've done. The final presentation provides you with the structure of this online A-level sociology course through a summary of the education sections common to all boards. I hope to see you there.